Thank you, Sean Gervais of Victoria, British Columbia, for sponsoring today's video. Do you hate beat sheets?
No, as a matter of fact, I think beat sheets are required. I always write a beat sheet. Sometimes I skip a treatment. I mean, it depends on if I'm writing for money, somebody's paying me to write, I still will write a beat sheet, then I will write a treatment because that's the only part you get paid for. You don't get paid for a beat sheet. And then I turn in the treatment, then I get the go-ahead to do the script, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm writing for myself, sometimes I'll skip the treatment, but I always write a beat sheet. Beat sheets are necessary because you need to know where you're going before you set out on your journey. So if you go to the airport and you don't know where you're going, you have a passport and you just walk onto the first plane that you see, you might end up on a desert. You might end up in a communist country. You might end up in a war zone. You might end up on a beach in the Bahamas. You never know where you're going to go. But if you know where you're going to go, if you have a general plan, you're going to end up someplace where you're going to be happy. Now, the same thing is if you have a general plan when you're writing a movie, if you have your 7 points and you link those 7 points with beats, then you know where you're going to go when you start writing your script. If you start writing your script and you don't have that planning, you write yourself into a corner and then you don't know how to get out of it. Now, when I was teaching at UCLA, they have a 10-week course called 434 for graduate students in the MFA program. And you have 10 weeks to write your film from start to finish. That's a lot, and it's a fast way to write a film. But to make things worse, the first week is taken up by pitches. And so the students would pitch to you their stories, and you would choose 8 students to be in your class. And they would have the opportunity to choose which professor they want to be in. So the head of the department would figure out which students would belong in which class. And so you've basically the first week. And then you only have 9 weeks to do it. So then I would make my students write the bios in the first week, and then write the 7 points in the second week. And then, actually the second week, the bios. The third week would be the 7 points. The fourth week would be a beat sheet. And by the 5th week, they're saying many of the other guys in other classes are already 20, 30 pages into their script, and we're nowhere. We're never going to make it. And I said, they're going to run into problems, and you're not. Because on the 6th week, you're going to be starting writing your pages, and you'll be writing 10 or 15 pages a week, sometimes 20 pages a week, because you have the outline, you have the beats, you know where you're going, and you're not going to write yourself into a corner. And by the end of 10 weeks, they would always say, wow, we're done, but Joe there is still in the midpoint because he can't figure out where to go. And so it's very important, I think, to write a beat sheet, at least a beat sheet, and sometimes a treatment. If you're a new writer, I would say write a treatment, because that gives you an opportunity to write a complete description of each beat, so that you can visualize the film completely. And then once you have a very good treatment, say 15, 20, 25 pages, maybe 30 pages, you bring it into your screenwriting program, Final Draft or Movie Magic or whatever you use. And you can just see the paragraph, write the scene that goes to that paragraph, delete that paragraph, see the next paragraph, write the scene that goes to that paragraph, delete that paragraph, and you never get stuck. You never think at the beginning of the day, what am I going to write? I've got writer's block. It's impossible to have writer's block if you've got a good treatment, or at least a beat sheet. If you've got a good beat sheet, if you've experienced enough to skip the treatment, if you have a good beat sheet, you do the same thing. You bring it into your program and you write beat for beat. You never have writer's block. You never get stuck.
So sort of going back to the airport analogy, it's like if you told someone from a small town, hey, can you go pick up Uncle Joe from LAX? Mm-hmm. It's really easy. Just go pick him up. This is the terminal. Oh, sure. If anybody who's even from LA is scared of LAX, the loop, and you can't park certain places, so you need to kind of know all these things before you go.
Exactly.
If you go, it's not going to be very fun, and you could end up in traffic, different things. So if you play on these different things, it might be more successful.
Exactly. I mean, LAX is tough enough, and I know LAX really well. it's still tough. There's no good way to do LAX. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to be like Robin Williams in Rush. What is it? Something on the Hudson. Do you remember that film?
What year?
Oh gosh, must be the 80s.
Okay.
But he's a Russian immigrant, and he's in the middle.
Yes.
He's in the middle of a grocery store, and he wants to get something like coffee, and there are 30 choices of coffee, and there's too many choices, and he just freezes. He can't do it. He has a meltdown. If you go to LAX and you don't know what you're doing, you can just look at it and go, I can't deal with it.
Yeah. Or even if you do, you can have a meltdown.
Yeah. LAX is a bad thing. But it's the idea that if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there.
Sure.
You're going to get someplace else that might not be good.
Right. So seemingly easy thing is, oh yeah, I'll just go and, small town. It should be no problem. But something that's very complicated, analogous to this. But exactly what is a beat sheet, though? If somebody had never seen a beat sheet, what does it look like?
Okay. Well, it can be, first of all, a beat sheet is something that you never show to anybody else that you don't trust. So you never show it to the producer. If you're hired to write a film, you never show it to the producer or the director. You only show them the finished product. But the beat sheet you can show to your trusted advisors. Now, it can take many forms because you're writing it for yourself. You're writing it as a guideline for yourself. So when I write a beat sheet, I'll write a sentence or two, but sometimes I can visualize that whole scene and I will write a paragraph. And then the next beat, maybe I'll only write 2 words. He goes to the bathroom. Well, that's 3 words, or 4 words. Maybe the next beat after that is something that is another paragraph. The next one is just 2 lines. So it can be whatever you want it to be, whatever guides you through the process of the film, the structure of the film. That's what a beat sheet is. What I ask my students to do is to write 2 lines, but if they get carried away and write 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, that's okay too. But at least 2 lines. A beat sheet should generally be about 3 pages, single-spaced, but it doesn't have to be. It can be 5, it can be 1, it can be 10, whatever works out for you, for your story, whatever you need to write for that story, so that you have the story in a form that you can then take and write the script from, or write the treatment from, which I think is the recommended for a new writer. Definitely write a treatment. And that gives you the opportunity to stop and think, okay, I've got this beat. This person has to ride their bicycle downtown. What happens when they're riding their bicycle downtown? And I think it through, and then I write the paragraph or 2 paragraphs that are needed for that, and I write that in the treatment. Or if I'm jumping from the beat sheet to the script, I still work out the whole scene in my head, and then I write the scene in script form.
And you say we're never showing this to the rest of the production, the producer, the director?
Never, because they're going to make suggestions there based on what you have written in shorthand, and they're not going to understand what you've written in shorthand. If I write something like he rides his bike downtown, they're going to say, well, why does he ride a bike? Why is he going downtown? What happens on the way downtown? Whereas I know exactly what happens, and they use it, well, no, take the bike out, make him take the bus downtown. No, it's important to ride the bike. So you get in an argument where you shouldn't be getting in an argument yet. Later on, you can get into a discussion about why he took the bike downtown instead of the bus. There's a reason for that. I don't know what the reason is right now, but there is a reason for that. And you have the reason, but you don't want to have to explain everything, every point. And if the beat sheet is so condensed that not everybody's going to understand what's in it, it's hard to show to other people. Now, you can show it to people that understand beat sheets or understand you as a beat sheet writer, and you can talk with them. And I call those people trusted advisors. Now, I do that in my class, and I have them share in my class, because we all understand what the beat sheet is according to me. And the beat sheet has 3 elements in it. Each beat has 3 elements. Who's there, where they are, and what's the conflict. So each beat should have those things in it. And my students understand that. And they are able to discuss, okay, I understand where they are, but why is it only him there? Why isn't he with somebody else there? It would be better if he were talking to somebody rather than having a monologue there. So you can get into those kind of questions with your trusted advisor. But if you do it to a producer, they're going to want to impose their ideas on that script before they even know what it's about. So it's not a good idea.
And then each beat should have conflict, you say, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So the three elements, the three things that we need to know about is who's there, where they are, and what the conflict is. So the conflict is the central issue of every scene. If there's no conflict in the scene, it's not a scene. It's leading up to a scene or it's leading away from a scene, but it's not a scene. So each beat should be a scene, so it should have the conflict, should be clear. What is happening in that scene? Now, as long as we're talking about conflict, we should talk about what the beats represent. If the beat does not move the story forward or tell us something about the central character, then we don't need that beat. If it's just a funny scene, but it doesn't move the story forward, sometimes they'll let it in a comedy, but most times they won't. They'll cut it if it doesn't move the scene, if it doesn't move the story. If it doesn't tell you something new about the central character or the antagonist possibly, then we don't need it. It doesn't help us. We can take it out. We can have it, the story will flow without it. And that's how you figure out if we need that scene. If we take that scene out, we're not sure about that scene, we take it out, and the story still flows without it, then we don't need that scene. If we take it out and the story does not flow, if there's something missing, then we put that scene back in, but we make sure we add conflict in that scene. Otherwise, it doesn't hold you. If there's no conflict, you're not held by that scene.
So just a scene where the main character's riding their bike downtown and the birds are chirping, beautiful blue sky, that's not enough. We have to be where maybe
there's a pothole.
Okay, or someone asks for a ride on the handlebars.
Right, or somebody jumps in front of them, or a car cuts them off, or something happens. Right. At least something, there's something that you jump at. In a very soft scene like that, we have to have something that motivates him. Like the scene in and Out, when he's riding on that road, he has a crash. And then the conflict starts. He starts the conflict with the Tom Selleck character, and they have their discussion about, being gay.